And hello everybody, welcome back one last time to Final Fantasy III on the PSP. I'm your host nicodemoscain, and this is going to be my long-ass review. That's right, we did this for Final Fantasy I and Final Fantasy II. Sit back, get yourself a nice tall glass of chocobo milk. No, that doesn't sound right at all. We made the joke about Chocobo Krispies. So yeah, Chocobo Krispies and your, what creature? Oh god, it'd probably be like a Marlboro. I don't know. Anyways, we're gonna go through this the same way we did with the last two reviews of the Final Fantasy series. We're going to go to the Bestiary, and I'm just going to basically ramble on about the game. At the end of it, I will give a score just like I did with 1 and 2, and we'll go from there. Now, there are some of these missing. There are some enemies I did not fight. So there will be some gaps, but actually there's going to be a lot of gaps. It's almost like I missed an entire dungeon of this. Holy crap. But yeah, we're going to go through them all, and check them out, see what's up. So anyways, as far as the game is concerned, I'm going to actually turn my TV down, it's a little loud. As far as the game was concerned, this was really good. Of course, this was originally a Japanese title. Came out on the Famicom. Never made it over to the United States. Came out in, what was it, 89 or 90? I think it was, the original one. And we never knew about it. I personally never knew about it. I always thought that Final Fantasy II and Final Fantasy III were the two games on Super Nintendo. And of course, Final Fantasy II was Final Fantasy IV, and Final Fantasy III was actually Final Fantasy VI. So, of course, anybody that's followed, Final Fantasy for any amount of time, you know how that works. That's been the way it's been for years, and it's only been recently that we've been able to play some of these older games. Within the past 10 to 20 years, they've finally started releasing some of these things in a decent way. So, of course, this was Final Fantasy III, and it was originally on the DS, and they ported it over to the PSP. I'm playing it on my pstv, which, I've gone into great lengths about how much I love the PSTV. If you are a PlayStation fan, definitely get one of them. They're kind of cheap, and they play a ton of games. And you can mod the hell out of them, too, if you can get a good one. But they took this. It was, originally 8-bit. Took it, upscaled it, gave it 3 dimensions. The whole deal. You're seeing it for yourself. Very much in the style of Final Fantasy VII, which I think they modeled a lot of the, these 3D rehashes like that. And it came out really good. I mean, the graphics are, they're PlayStation 1 era. So they're not the best in the world, but you know what's happening, you know what's going on, and they look really nice, because I think that the PSTV is having to fight with upscaling a handheld game. There's a lot of, little graphic jaggies, and, there's a lot of little things that you look at it and you say, meh. But honestly, all around, it was a very good game. I don't ever remember fighting a killer fish. Especially like that. Look at that scene. I don't even remember that scene. Holy shit. But it came out to be really good. The enemy models looked very, very similar to the 8-bit models that I have looked up. To be able to see, because we've gone through, as we were going through the game, I know there was a couple of them where I said, I wonder what that would have looked like in 8 bits. So whenever I looked it up, I was like, oh yeah, it's a pretty good representation of what they looked like, just in a 3-dimensional form. And it was nice, they did a good job. It was a little cutesy. I know there's a lot of times inside the game that I said this would probably look a lot better in 8 bits, but I'm trying not to judge the entire game based upon you know, the 8-bit Final Fantasy 3, even though I have to. You kind of have to. I mean, by itself, it's a standard Final Fantasy game. You know, it had the turn-based, you know, fighting. It was really, really cool. I definitely enjoyed it. Like I said, the graphics, they're kind of subpar, but they are what they are. You know what's going on. I think the art more than anything else definitely pulled the style of the game through. It's not, this art style is definitely not my it's not my cup of tea. You know, the cutesy, you know, big head, fat bottomed, you know, character models. Those to me have become overdone. I definitely got tired of those long ago. But it was, you know, like I said, it was cute enough to be able to pull you through. As far as gameplay, it's, like I said, it's standard Final Fantasy, you know, you're just basically hitting the X button. There were times, once I started getting towards the end of the game, there were times where I was just, you know, mindlessly just hitting the X button. Not even thinking about what I was doing, especially whenever you have the, you know, the cursor memory set. So, I mean, there's not much to it, you know. Gameplay mechanics, the job system was pretty amazing. There's so many jobs that this game started the whole job system in Final Fantasy. And even though I didn't even use half of them, I don't even think I used half, I think I only used like maybe a quarter of them. And it was cool, and it was cool to have the jobs there, but really, I mean, I would say it for people that wanted to experiment, for people that wanted to have different playstyles. This, you know, I could understand why this game was as big as it was, because there was a lot of variety. There was a lot of ways that you could play this game. I mean, the story was still somewhat linear. It was open. I mean, it was a very open world, but there were times where it was basically, you know, you're going to go from point A, go to point B, come back to point A, you know, do this, do that. And that's, yeah, that's basically Final Fantasy. You just follow the story around. The side quest stuff didn't really come into play too much until the very end of it, and that's only because, you know, it went from the Nintendo DS up to the PSP. Now on the Nintendo DS, you know, there was a feature that let you email or message other players that would open up the side quests faster. And that didn't come up on PSP. So you basically had to get to certain points in the game to be able to open those up. And it kind of sucked that I wasn't able to open up any of those side quests until almost the very ass end of the game. And even then, I still haven't opened up. There's like one final side quest that I have not opened up. There's one final side enemy that I need to go kill, and I never did it, you know. And there was honestly no reason for me to backtrack to try to get everything else done. So in a way, the gameplay kind of fails, and a lot of that too comes with the story, which I enjoyed the story to a point. It's to me, to my eyes, being older, having played a lot of RPGs, having played a lot of video games, having read a lot of stories, seen a lot of movies, it was a very standard kind of, you know, boy wakes up, finds people to help him fight a thing, turns out they're the saviors of the world, and then they go off and, You know, try to beat the bad guys, and it was very standard. You know, I think 30 years ago, 25, however many years ago, it would have been something a little bit fresher than normal. But I mean, we've seen it now. We've seen it almost, well, 15 plus times now. So I mean, you know, it's not something that I could point out to and just say, oh yeah, man, Final Fantasy 3, God, that was the best thing in the world. No, but it was still good enough for me to go through. And I wasn't, it's not like Final Fantasy 2, where I got so bored with it that I was done with it. This game always kind of kept me coming back. And for that, you know, it brings the score back up a little bit. Because it made me want to finish this game. I definitely wanted to get through the game to see where it was going. So it's kind of that double-edged sword, you know. It's almost like I'm trying to think of another Final Fantasy that was like that, where you wanted to keep going even though it wasn't exactly the best story in the world. I would say, well, 13. I would say 13. I mean, you know, we haven't really talked about any of the other games yet. I think in my Final Fantasy 1 playthrough, I talked in length about. Oh, look at the behemoth! Oh, nice. But I think in Final Fantasy 1, I talked, you know, in length about all the games, you know, separated one by one, and what I thought about them, and I mean, if I wasn't so in love with Final Fantasy VIII, I would have put Final Fantasy VIII in there as well, because Final Fantasy VIII had its ups and downs. But it's that kind of game where it's like, you know, it's got some flaws, and if you really took a step back and looked at it, you'd be like, why am I playing this again? You know, what's the value of it for me to keep playing this? Yeah, other than seeing, you know, the new crazy monsters or the recolors. There were a lot of recolors in this game. I mean, there were a lot of recolors in this game. But then, you know, they had to have a lot of recolors, you know, because a lot of these came from, you know, the 8-bit era. So that's what you do. You have to recolor. You have to recolor enemies. But it was entertaining. It was fun. It didn't have that Final Fantasy humor to it yet. There was some towards the very end of the game. Actually, the final cutscene, it started getting a little Final Fantasy silly. That's what I call it. You know, whenever Final Fantasy just kind of pops off the rails and realizes that, you know, this is just a game. Let's just be silly and have fun. And I don't know if that was in the original game or not. I have no idea. I have not played the original game. I played a little bit of it on a translated ROM, but I mean, it wasn't enough to be able to really get into it. So I don't know. I know I did say that I went too fast there. I know I did say that I would like to have seen that last cutscene in the actual 8-bit version, just to see what it was like. But you know, that was what it was. What else was I just thinking about? I was talking while I was flipping through, and I totally forgot what I was going to say. As far as enemies and strategies, we did not die very much. There were a couple times where we died, and it was mostly just a stupid thing where I screwed up. The bosses were not the worst. You know, the leveling was not so bad. Towards the end, it got it got kind of boring. But honestly, just going through the game, it was not as bad as, you know, most other games. The grind was not as rough as most Final Fantasies that I've played, at least. So it was entertaining. I mean, it wasn't too hard, and it wasn't too easy. It was a good middle of the road kind of Final Fantasy. It was enough that, you know, as you kept playing, you kept thinking, you know, I'm doing all right here. I think I might be okay. You know, we might be able to get through this game. That last boss, though, not knowing that I had to weaken her down by fighting the four lesser bosses, you know, I never would have known. So she absolutely whooped my ass. Here's some of the actual bosses now. Nepto Dragon. It's all question marks. Huh. So yeah, it was just a matter of exploring more than I did, I guess, and knowing more than I did. I'm glad that I had the strategy guide. Believe me, Hein. I love Hein. But believe me, having the strategy guide definitely helped. I don't know. I think the dungeons were. Yeah, the dungeons weren't the worst in the world. They weren't like completely overdone. You know, some games can get way crazy with the dungeons where you're inside of a dungeon for an hour, 2 hours at a time, and it's just completely ridiculous. This one wasn't so bad. It was still kind of straightforward. There were times where you could go off to the side and you can find a thing and you could go explore it and do that. And they did a pretty good job setting that up for you. But in the end, it was a middle of the road kind of Final Fantasy. I mean, it really truly was. There wasn't really much there that blew this game way over the top. It was good, but it just wasn't perfect. But yeah, again, the story, like I said, it's standard fare, at least now. Like I said, back then, it may have been something completely different. Graphics, like I said, it's standard 1990s, you hear me? Well, yeah, actually, late 90s PlayStation 1 era kind of graphics. Maybe a little bit better than PlayStation 1 graphics. But it was made for a handheld. Cloud of Darkness. She doesn't have her tentacles, though. That was it. But it was just kind of a standard, standard DS game, really. Like I said, it looked good. It was fun to play. Yeah, I spent a lot of time on it. Hey, man, spending 64 hours on a game is pretty nice. 89% of the chests, 3,500 enemies defeated. I fled 24 battles. Max hits, and I only got 2 of the Master Cards. And I said, it's possible to, go back in and play all that and finish all that, but I don't know if I want to or not. One other thing I wanted to show you guys, I actually have to stop the game, I think. I don't know. Can I? Let's see if I can get back out of here. No, I have to actually restart the game. Alright, give me 1 second. Let me restart the game. And I will show you guys the other thing. Okay, we're back. We're back in the front of the game. There's this little item here called Gallery. We're going to go into this and check this out, because there was other stuff in here as well I wanted to show you. We got illustrations, we got the opening movie, and we have a music player. Of course, the music player is all the background music and all that. You don't need to worry about that. But the illustrations, it has all of the old, I think it's the old Amano illustrations to it. I am missing several of these, especially down towards the bottom. There was several of the bigger enemies that I'm missing. And I only got a 94% completion rate. But we'll go back through this as we're talking about the game. See what these are, because I have not looked at these. So... Here, let's get the full screen in there. But yeah, all in all, like I said, it was a middle-of-the-road kind of Final Fantasy. It wasn't the best, it wasn't the worst. I enjoyed my time in it. I really did. Just getting through it. I really enjoyed it. it just wasn't anything special to me. And again, it's just my opinion. I know other people have their opinions. I've heard from several different people that have said that, Final Fantasy III was one of their favorites. And that's cool. I would almost say if you wanted to introduce somebody to Final Fantasy, I mean, if you had a way to show somebody what Final Fantasy could be, and if you wanted to give them something that didn't have too convoluted of a storyline and was easy enough that they could get through it in one playthrough, I would say this would be a good one. I mean, this is a nice middle of the road Final Fantasy. Definitely would suggest that to anyone. That's it's really good. So I need to give this bad boy a score, don't I? And so when it comes to giving these things scores, I go whatever out of 10. And I've been kind of thinking about that Princess Sarah. Boy, she did have some assets, didn't she? Yikes. All right. I wonder if they actually wrote the character up like that. It's like heaving bosoms. I don't know. But God, I swear. Who was that? Oh, that was the other princess. What was her name? Oh God, I can't remember her name. Of course, Unai and her parrot. Is that a tree nymph? I don't know. But anyways, I gotta get back to it. Trying to give it a score, I started thinking about it, and I was like, it's not... Okay, but before I do this, I love Amano's chocobos. I think they are the craziest damn things that I've ever seen. Completely different than any other chocobo that we've seen. You look at that and you're like, how in the hell did we ever pull a big yellow chicken out of that? That's just completely insane. But I love Amano's chocobos. I don't think that if they would have kept that, I don't think that the Final Fantasy series would have been as loved as it is, because that's enough to scare somebody away. But still, I just love that. Anyways, I was thinking about a score. And like I said, it's not the most perfect game in the world. And there's a lot of things that move the score around. The graphics kind of pull it to a point, and then the story kind of pulls it down, and then, the gameplay kind of pulls it up. The fact that it's a Final Fantasy pulls it to a point. And so I said, what I would give it out of my personal experience. Trying not to compare it to any of the other Final Fantasies, and that's very hard to do, especially, since I've played just about every single one of them now. I said 7 out of 10. It's better than a 6, since I wanted to give it more of a middle of the road kind of score. I really wanted to just say, look, it's a 6 out of 10, whatever. There was a part of me that said, look, that's a 5 out of 10, I don't care. But then I started really thinking about it. Oh God, look, all the jobs. Oh wow, they actually went through all the jobs. And, oh, that's cool. I love the white mages. Look at that. That's so neat. The black mages too. And of course, a lot of these designs, like I've said before, they translate up to Final Fantasy XIV. I think Final Fantasy XIV owes a lot more to Final Fantasy III than it does just about any other game. I think there's something to it. I don't know, but there's definitely something that is owed there. But anyways, getting back to what I was saying, I didn't want to just make it, it's It's just a middle of the road Final Fantasy. Nobody cares. But no, not really. It's not that middle of the road. I mean, it's good, and it's a game that you can suggest. So it gets above a 6, at least. But it's not so good that it can get an 8. You know, it's not as amazing as like a 7 or, you know, a 10. And I'm talking about Final Fantasy 7 or Final Fantasy 10. Now, of course, I did give an 8 out of 10 to Final Fantasy 2, and that was because Final Fantasy 2, it had enough of whatever it was to just really get me. You know, I mean, it was enough that it was hard enough. It had that halfway decent battle system. If you understood how to play the game, you could definitely enjoy Final Fantasy 2 more than you did. But it's not that good, and you know, there was still that cutesy aspect that I couldn't get past. And I'm just trying to get through these. Nice scenes, though. I do like those. And then, of course, the airship, which I think that was the first airship that we got. Yeah, not the Invincible. One of the ones that got shot down. I don't know how many ships we went through in this game. Well, we go through like 4 or 5 ships. But yeah, I would definitely say 7 out of 10. That's a pretty hard 7 out of 10. There's a part of me that still wants to push it down towards a 6, but still, I think it's worthy of that 7 out of 10. So that was the last one. That was the that was the opening scene. But I really don't have too much else to say about it other than that. Like I said, it was fun. It was enjoyable. It was worth the time going through it. I'm glad that I did it. I'm glad that I have an idea of what the story was. I had heard about Final Fantasy 3, but I never actually got a chance to play it. You know, I heard people talk about it. They said, you know, it's at least one you should at least check out, you know, and that whole thing. And I'm glad I was able to find it, and I was glad I was able to play it. I do really, really want to play the 8-bit version now. I really want to see what that was like. But in the end, it is what it is. So there you go. Final Fantasy 3 on the PSP. 7 out of 10. I cannot speak about the DS version or the NES version. Like I said, I haven't played those, so I don't know. I don't know if they're going to be any different or not. I just know this is the one we did. You know, it's a good middle of the road Final Fantasy. It's one that you could probably put a good 40 hours into, 40, 50 hours into, and really enjoy it. Again, I've seen guys that have played this. They killed this game in 20 episodes of a YouTube run, you know, at 30, 40 minutes a piece. So that's less than 30 hours. But we took our time. We had fun playing it. So there you go. That was my long-ass review, and yeah, it was definitely a long-ass review of Final Fantasy 3 on the PSP. It's a 7 out of 10. There you go. I'm going to move on to Final Fantasy 4 now. I think it's about time. And we are going to play the Final Fantasy 4, what is it called? The Complete. I think it's what it's called, Final Fantasy 4 Complete. It's on the PSP. I was going to play Final Fantasy 2 on the Super Nintendo, you know, which is Final Fantasy 4, just for that old nostalgia's sake. But I said no, I would rather have the complete version. You know, there's a Final Fantasy 4, what was it called, Intermission, and then Final Fantasy 4 The After Years. So having the whole story would be pretty nice. And I played a little bit of it just to see what it was. And it's that old school kind of, it's more of a 16-bit. Actually, I would say 32-bit, 16-bit kind of. It's you'll have to see it. But I said that's the version we're going to play. We're going to go through that and see what it's like, and we'll see how it goes from there. Anyways, guys, I gotta get off here. You guys have heard enough of my ramblings. Thank you guys very much for watching this. I've been nicodemoscain. This has been my long-ass review of Final Fantasy III on the PSP. It's coming up. Final Fantasy IV complete on the PSP. It's coming up. I will probably start it on a Monday, so whenever this one gets done, it'll probably be the Monday after that. Usually take a week off between these just to be able to set it up and get it done. Anyways, guys, like, comment, and subscribe, or don't. It doesn't really matter at this point, but I thank everybody who does, and I thank everybody who's come along for the ride with me. It's been a fun trip. I'm glad I played this game. You know, I'm still glad I'm doing this whole Final Fantasy thing. It's like I said before too. We are probably not going to be done with this Final Fantasy run for like 3 or 4 years. It's going to be a while. I'm going to be playing these games for a while. So just, hunker down with me. We'll get through them. I definitely want to keep doing this and see where it goes from here. But yeah, definitely come back around for Final Fantasy IV. That should be starting up, like I said, on the Monday after this one goes out, which, again, I don't know when. So just keep your eyes open. Subscribe. It'll help. I can definitely say it'll help. Other than that, until then, I wish you all well in all your future endeavors, and I hope that the world lasts for you. God bless. Take care. Save often. Go out and play Final Fantasy III if you can find it. If you can't find it, go download the ROM and play the Final Fantasy III on Nintendo. Tell me how it is. Tell me how the 8-bit version is, unless I decide to play it eventually. But I probably won't, because I can't, at least until I get rid of these Final Fantasies, I can't do outside games. Too many outside games. So, other than that, I will stop and let you guys go. You guys take it easy.